This is Glenn again with the Weightlifting Scoop, and I'll talk a little bit about what's been going on the last week or two. Obviously, we had the tryout, and we've got some folks still not here, and that, it's kind of a big step to move across the country for some of them and whatnot, but it'll be an interesting couple of weeks, 2 to 4 weeks coming up as the people we invited get here. But the biggest thing that's gone on lately is I was in Australia for a week, and that it's kind of a bad time to go because we just had the tryouts, and we had a new lifter here, Ryan Clark, and whatnot. But tell you what, pretty interesting time in Australia. I was down there with Muscle Driver Australia and Ben and Simone Tiley, and went to the Australian regionals, which is the first CrossFit regionals I've ever been to. Have you ever been to a CrossFit regionals, Travis?
No, I've never been to regionals, but I have watched the games the past 3 years, so I'm definitely familiar with what it's like at one of the bigger CrossFit events.
It was actually pretty damn cool. I mean, for one, you have the aspect of an actual crowd, and not, I'm not talking like 500 people, but thousands of people in the stands watching.
How many do you think were there? Like 10,000?
If I had to guess, I would say maybe 6,000 to 8,000.
Much more than a weightlifting meet, for sure.
It was more than a weightlifting meet, but it's just a whole big event. It's there's a lot of vendors, all kinds of booths set up where people are selling T-shirts and different equipment and things like that. They've got a lot of media people, audio, video, where they're taking. Obviously, they video the whole competition pretty well to where they can make. Do some good production for that, but they also have they had interviews in the crowd and all that. They actually interviewed me on like the third day, but the whole thing just has an aspect of just a big event to it, which I've not seen it. Obviously, not at a weightlifting meet, and that really made it really exciting, and you could tell people that were there were really interested in what was going on because, the hall where all the vendors were would fill up at certain times. And then when there was an event out on the floor, it would empty out. People would go into the stands to watch. And even just not seeing it, but hearing it, you hear people cheer like crazy. I mean, it just reminds you of a professional sporting event.
Well, what was the most exciting event of the competition? I know that probably the shortest event was the overhead squats. Were people cheering really loud for that one specifically since it was a shorter time domain?
They were, but that I don't think the crowd probably got into it as much for that. The one workout where the crowd got into it more than anything, I think, was, and I don't think it was part of the individual regionals. I think it was part of the team competition, but it was an event where they had to do a certain number of cleans I think for the guys it was 100 kilos, and for the women it might have been 60 kilos or something like that. And then they ran to the other end of the floor and did a couple of rope climbs, and they ran back to do more cleans, and then ran back to do more rope climbs. I think it was 4 cycles between cleans and rope climbs, and the crowd really got into that. Really got into that, and it was actually pretty damn exciting. It really was. It was like on the women's competition, one particular girl got way out ahead, during the first set of cleans and rope climbs, and then really faded at the end. And, the girl that had been probably close to last about midway through ended up winning it. So, the whole thing was just really easy to cheer for, and really easy to get worked up as a spectator. I mean, I went out and actually watched that one, stepped away from the booth for a while and actually watched that one. And, hell, it was exciting to me.
So this was for the whole continent of Australia, right?
Yeah, their regionals they only have one regionals for Australia. Australia is like 23 or 25 million people. So it was a big event. And I was amazed at how many people there are. Pretty damn serious athletes. I mean, this was not, weekend warriors type of thing. I think, pretty much all the competitors were pretty in shape, pretty serious, and whatnot. It was surprising to me to see that many people that are very good athletes. I mean, I've seen some other CrossFit type competitions, and you have a few people show up that are pretty serious, and quite a few that are more like I said, kind of weekend warriors. And these people knew how to lift. They knew how to do the events. They were obviously very prepared for it, and it made for an exciting competition for sure.
So do you think CrossFit is having the same effect on weightlifting in Australia as it is here? Do people have a better understanding of the lifts and all that kind of stuff?
I'm pretty tempted to say, and I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but I'm tempted to say that Australian CrossFitters are even more into weightlifting than Americans are. One thing that was interesting is, boy, they all knew who you guys were. I mean, you guys on the MDUSA team, I mean, it was very obvious that there's a lot of people in Australia watching the videos, and not just watching them, but actually knew, like, who you are, what your best lifts are, not just snatch, clean, jerk, but power snatch and all the accessory lifts. So, I think it's very popular down there. And I think that the weightlifting or CrossFit as far as competitive weightlifting is having the same effect. I mean, when I was at the Gosford CrossFit gym that Ben Tiley owns, there was a girl that came in to work out, Kylie Lindbeck, who she's a 75, probably could be a 69, jerked 110 kilos. That's a pretty serious jerk for a girl at that weight class.
Yeah, for sure.
She's definitely one of the better weightlifters in Australia, or female lifters in Australia. But typical story, she came from CrossFit, found she was good at weightlifting, quit CrossFit. She's been training entirely as a weightlifter for like the past year. And this is a girl she's young and she's got a ton of potential. Couldn't really be called an experienced lifter, more of a beginner, but handling some serious weight. And I think has a definite potential to represent Australia in the Commonwealth Games and elsewhere in international competition. So you look at, a girl like her that got interested in weightlifting because of CrossFit, came from CrossFit, and is going to be one of Australia's best, I think. So it's definitely the same things in Australia are happening here in the U.S.
Now, for those that don't know, what is the Commonwealth Games?
It's basically sort of like, I guess you'd say, the Pan Am Games, where it's a competition between countries that had a tie to the British Empire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's the continental championships for those countries, right? So if they don't get Olympic slots at Worlds, then they go to the Commonwealth Games to qualify a spot.
Yeah, in the same way we would go to Pan Ams.
Right. Okay.
So I think I just can't. I was in Australia last year for 4 weeks just doing seminars. I think this time going down and actually being at the CrossFit Regionals gave me a lot more perspective on how CrossFit is affecting weightlifting in Australia and the general attitude of the whole CrossFit community down there towards weightlifting. Gave me a better perspective than I got last summer. Because you always wonder when you go to a gym that actually invited you to come for a seminar if that gym's actually typical, of all the CrossFitters in the area. They may be an outlier in terms of really pushing Olympic weightlifting. But I think I got more of a view of, the typical attitude. And I can say that, yeah, CrossFit's just as big of a thing for weightlifting in Australia as it has here. It was quite the eye opener. And I think James right now, he still isn't back yet, but James last week went to Wales.
Yeah, he's been gone. That's why Ryan's been able to stay with me. James was nice enough to let him stay in his room. So Ryan Clark, the new lifter, has been staying with me, and while James has been gone, and I know he's been having a good time.
Yeah, I talked to Don McCauley a couple times, who is the guy James is with over there. They're doing 3 or 4 seminars. I think maybe like 3 in Wales and 1 in Ireland or something like that. They've gone really well. I went to Ireland with John North a couple of years ago, and we're really seeing, I think, like a resurgence in weightlifting in Ireland and that area. I don't really think at that time it was too much because of CrossFit. It was just kind of happened organically that new people were in charge of the sport and really fighting to regain some prominence within the athletic community and field a better team for Ireland. But I'm sure that CrossFit's having the same effect there, which is just introducing more lifters into the sport, and growing the number of participants and that type of thing. And it's pretty awesome that James and Don can go over there and do some seminars. I know that when I was there, they were really kind of reaching out to other countries, particularly Western countries that deal with the same type of drug testing apparatus that they will be dealing with, for cues on how to up their game, I guess you'd say.
What do you mean by that?
Well, just tips on recruitment of athletes and coaching techniques and, programming and all that, because, however bad we think we've had it here as far as our, prominence in the international standings have dropped, I think, the Irish were definitely on the lower end than we were. And so they're looking for ways to climb their way back, if not to the top, at least part way up the ladder to a position better than where they are now.
Now, what's that kid's name, the 85? Is he from Ireland?
Clarence Kennedy.
Yeah, he's good.
He's phenomenal. He's absolutely phenomenal. And it's got to help him to have one guy like that, just for exposure.
Yeah, he was doing the parkour stuff, right? So his body knew how to move. He was a gymnastics kind of.
Yeah, I've seen some of his parkour videos, and it's pretty phenomenal what he can do. I mean, that kid can jump up, down, and sideways like nobody you've ever seen. And so obviously that transferred a lot into weightlifting. He ended up being pretty dang strong too. I mean, he's a hell of a squatter, and he's got that movement ability and everything. For everything I've heard, like when I was in Ireland, and just the friends that I still have from over there, the reports are, I guess you'd say, that he also trains astronomically hard, real hard worker. And you put all those things together, you're gonna have a good weightlifter, no doubt.
Well, I think it's amazing that internationally there is, I guess, a demand for seminars from U.S. coaches. So in Australia, you've been able to go over there and give some seminars, and Don's been able to go with James over to Wales. You think there's other countries that would be looking for the same thing, or?
Actually, yeah. I mean, we've had a lot of inquiries from various countries, but as you know, it's kind of hard to do. I mean, there's a big time commitment. The travel is pretty atrocious to certain places. But I think we'll see more of that. We'll definitely see more of that. I think it was very difficult in the past to have that kind of exchange between different countries because the numbers were so small. So financially, it just didn't make sense. If you have, 8 lifters in a certain city in a certain country that think, yeah, it'd be great to have this coach or that coach or whoever come over, it's just not enough finances there to make it happen. And I think now with the expanding of the sport and the expanding of the numbers, like crazy, I think now that you have the amount of people because of CrossFit mostly, that it makes it financially make sense to have those sorts of things happen. And I think hopefully we'll see a lot of other coaches, even from other countries, be able to do that and be able to travel a little bit. And I think that makes everybody better when you can have that type of exchange of ideas, face to face. I think it can't help but raise the bar a little bit, not only in the U.S. but also in a lot of different countries.
Yeah, because before you kind of had to make the world championship team in order to talk to these international coaches or kind of get exposure over there. So things are definitely changing for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a whole perfect storm of things going on right now in weightlifting. One is just the base being exponentially expanded because of CrossFit. Number 2, you have all the new technology we have right now, with YouTube and things like that, got 10, 15 years ago, just the ability to have someone do a lift in training and video it, and then a day later have thousands and thousands of people all over the world be able to see it. So, that's really big, and that kind of technology I'm sure is affecting all of sports, not just weightlifting, but certainly been golden for weightlifting. And then the other thing that you have right now that's also happening is equipment. You have, number 1, the CrossFit gyms worldwide are providing a place to train. And number 2, because of the much larger demand for weightlifting equipment now than there ever was in the past, you see prices coming down, and it's more affordable for your average guy to get into the sport, even if they have to buy a set of weights and bar themselves and train in their garage. It's doable for your average person. 20 years ago, it maybe wasn't near as doable because of the expense. Prices for a decent bar, a decent set of plates have dropped like crazy in the past 5 years.
So, Muscle Driver Australia, they're having people join the team like we are. How many people do they have on their team now?
I believe they have 3 right now, but they're actively trying to expand. And one of the girl I was talking about, Kylie Lindbeck, they're actually talking about possibly being able to send her over here for a few months, to train with us. And I think that type of thing is another thing that's just wouldn't have happened 5-10 years ago, but the ability to have, an athlete go be sponsored and via those sponsors go train in another country with another group of lifters, another coach, whatever. Again, it's just all these things are happening that are so good for the sport, and I think will lead to a lot of people doing better than they could have under conditions, 20 years ago. There's so much positive going on.
Yeah, I know when I lived at the OTC, we had the Ecuador team, the Iranian team, and a lot of different lifters that came down. And for people like Natalie Woolfolk or Bergner now and Carissa, I mean, it was motivating to have those people from the Pan Am countries or from overseas come and train with them. I mean, they just got a little more amped up seeing their competition and where they were at. And I think if we could kind of get that going here, I mean, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I think things are going that way. Things are definitely going that way. And I think, the connection with Australia, because Muscle Driver has a division there, will probably be the first place that we'll see it. But I think we'll undoubtedly start seeing that, the possibility of those things happening with other countries also. And yeah, I think, again, that's just good for everybody. And it's great that it's happening on the private level now, because when it only happens at like our OTC or the National Training Center of other countries, I mean, that's great. That's wonderful for the top level athletes. But I think bringing it down from that level to other athletes that aren't currently on the national team or something like that, that opens a whole new set of possibilities, and promotion of the sport. I know that when that happened at the OTC, most people that were not at the OTC a lot of people didn't even know about it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't really widely publicized. It wasn't one of these things that everybody knew what was going on and everybody had a dog in the fight, so to say. But when you bring that out from the national training centers into private institutions, and you see fans being able to follow it and follow videos and discussions about different coaching methods and training methods and all this. And the more of that, the better. The more of that, the better.
Well, I think mostly what I learned from that is you talk a lot about in your seminars how a lot of people train differently and they get the same results. So it's not always about, are you doing 5 sets of 5 in the squat, or are you doing heavy singles in the squat? A lot of it has to do with, do you believe in what you're doing? And so when I witnessed there is like the Ecuadorian team, they'd always start out with drop snatches to a maximum. And, so for a while I was like, man, that's the secret. You have to do drop snatches to a maximum. And then I would see the Iranian team, they were very Bulgarian. And, and then of course there was other countries that were more Russian programming. So I just saw everyone training differently and realized at the end of the day, if you're training hard, it doesn't really matter what you do.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, and maybe, more interchange of ideas and lifters and this and that and the other. Maybe one of the biggest things it'll do is kind of solidify people's opinion on what is important and what isn't important. I mean, it's very possible and probable that all the arguments about which training system you use don't make a lot of difference. And what makes more difference is your motivation and your work ethic and your things like that. But the more information you have, the more different lifters train together, talk to each other, watch each other, whether it comes from how they eat, how they sleep, how they train, whatever. The more information everybody exchanges, the easier it will be for everyone to key in on what the most important aspect of becoming a great weightlifter is.
Yeah, definitely. We got about 5 more minutes here, so let's talk about what is next for our team. I know James and I are going to Pan Am's in right at 4 weeks now. James competes the 26th, and I compete the 27th, I think. So we're going to be doing that, but the whole team's going to nationals, right?
Yeah, everybody that qualifies, I think a couple of the new guys might not qualify for nationals, but everybody that qualifies will definitely go to nationals. So for the guys that are going to nationals, we're basically 8 weeks out, and this next 4 weeks will be, pretty hard training. I think those guys will be doing more volume, obviously, than you and James, and have a pretty high volume training this next month. You and James have pretty much done all the hard work already. I mean, we still obviously are training hard. We won't start to really taper or whatever till 2 weeks before, so we've still got a couple of hard weeks of training. But that's really as far as anything is planned right now. It's just we've got the two very big meets coming up is Pan Ams and Nationals, and people are on track for either one. I think there'll be some leeway for some of the guys coming on the team, because I know that some of them, like I said, probably won't qualify for nationals, or they've been doing kind of their own thing for the last however long, and probably will be better off not switching 100% to our training until after nationals is over, if they plan on competing. So we got a lot of ifs, I guess, right now, just because with the 4 or 5 people that have been invited to the team but aren't here yet. It kind of depends on when they show up and all that. But I tell you, I think that the next 4 or 5 weeks will be really exciting, because we're keep interjecting new people into the mix. And I know that training always takes off. It's always a little more competitive. Everyone's always got a little extra motivation when there's a new guy in the gym. So, if things work out right, we'll have one new person after another showing up for the next 4 weeks, and that's going to make for a really exciting month.
Yeah, no, it's been a little weird. After the Arnold, I guess James was training for collegiates, and I was kind of training for collegiates, but I was in the back of my head hoping that I didn't have to compete so I could just concentrate on Pan Ams, and luckily that worked out for me. And then the other guys were training for nationals, so everyone's kind of been on a different training program. Different part of the training program, at least, is what I mean. So after nationals, it should be nice where we have all these new people. We're training for the next meet together, and there won't be so many differences in the training program.
Well, the only thing is 1 or 2 of you could possibly or even should be on the world team. Mm-hmm. So whoever makes the world team, which I think obviously you and James have the best shot at that, will still be on a little different program, but we will have a bigger bulk of people all training for, the American Open. And that'll
even if we make the world team, that'll give us 2.5 months, so it won't be like a month from
right.
nationals.
There'll be a chance for everyone to back off from a pre-competition. It seems like you've been in pre-competition phase for a year now.
Yeah, so when you're always battling your weight down and doing this and that, you don't really have a chance to just kind of like concentrate on squats and just do your thing, and you're always like training for the next competition. So sometimes it's nice to have 3 or 4 months where you can just go for PRs.
It's more conducive to long-term progress.
Yeah, sure. And you can just go for PRs more. Whereas the way I view competition is when you're training for competition, you're trying to find your opener and being consistent. So the difference between consistency and pushing your max is slightly different, in my opinion. So having a couple extra months before competition will be nice.
Right, absolutely. Anything else?
I think we're good. Thanks for listening, guys.